Yi Xuan has found himself some unexpected allies, and together they're about to do something utterly insane. With the Tang Kingdom's army closing in and powerful enemies hunting him from the shadows, retreat is no longer an option. So Yi Xuan chooses the one path no one would expect. If the enemy wants war, then he'll strike straight into their territory and rob them blind. Welcome to episode 26. Recruitment. A thought had already taken root in Yi Xuan's mind. He wanted to recruit these people, but he knew perfectly well that if he wanted them to follow him, he first had to beat them until they truly acknowledged his strength. Only then would he have a chance. The strong ruled. That was why, this time, he revealed one of his hidden trump cards, the power of the earth. As the power of the earth poured continuously into his body, Yi Xuan slowly raised the massive big black sword with both hands. At that moment, an overwhelming sword aura erupted from him. The invisible pressure instantly swept over the plain-clothed girl and everyone beside her. Sword aura. His sword aura had nearly reached its peak. Crack! The ground and the surrounding houses began to split apart. The expressions of the plain-clothed girl and her companions grew even more solemn. Then Yi Xuan suddenly gripped big black sword and charged straight ahead. One sword determines life and death. None of the people before him were ordinary opponents. He did not dare hold back in the slightest and unleashed his strongest strike immediately. The instant Yi Xuan attacked, the plain-clothed girl closed her eyes. Her right foot slid half a step backward, the tip of her shoe lightly touching the ground. At the same time, her hands formed a seal. In a single breath, an extremely terrifying force gathered around her body, making her figure appear almost illusory. As Yi Xuan's heavy sword came crashing down, the girl lightly dragged her right foot across the ground and extended one finger forward. That fingertip touched big black sword. Boom! The huge sword stopped dead. But the collision of their two immense forces exploded outward like a hurricane. Everyone except Yi Xuan and the plain-clothed girl was blasted more than 30 zhang backward. Every building within 50 zhang collapsed with a thunderous roar. Even the ground beneath the two of them split apart, forming a terrifying web of cracks. Yet Yi Xuan and the plain-clothed girl did not move. A moment later, she withdrew her hand and took one step back. The instant her foot touched the ground, the earth shook violently as though an earthquake had struck. Yi Xuan drew big black sword back, his expression grave. You redirected the force of my sword. Redirecting force. The girl had not only stopped his strikes, she had also diverted most of the power contained within it. That was terrifying. The plain-clothed girl looked at him. You're strong, but we're not weak either. Are we still doing business or not? Yi Xuan fell silent for a moment before replying, Yes, but for now I can only pay you 100 million. I'll pay the rest when it's due. Is that a problem? She shook her head. Full payment. Yi Xuan shook his head. Impossible, she said calmly. Then there's nothing more to discuss. Yi Xuan smiled. Let me be frank, how much can you really earn working as mercenaries like this? The group looked at him. Yi Xuan pointed to himself. You've heard of me, haven't you? The girl shook her head. Never. Yi Xuan's face darkened. Could this woman really not take a joke at all? He coughed lightly and continued. Surely you've heard that Kangmu Academy in Tang Kingdom was destroyed? The girl looked at him. What exactly are you trying to say? Yi Xuan's expression turned serious. If I'm not mistaken, you don't get much business. Your asking price is too high. For that kind of money, people could sometimes hire a peak Almas realm expert instead. He paused and leaned forward slightly. Do you want to do something big? The plainclothed girl sat down nearby, pulled out a baked flatbread, took a bite, then produced a stalk of green onion. Yi Xuan's expression became strange. Why did this girl eat just like that glutton Ji? After a moment, she said, Let's hear it. Yi Xuan walked over and sat in front of her. He drew a large circle on the ground and said, Several kingdoms are attacking Tang Kingdom. That's a crisis, but for us, it can also be an opportunity. If you're willing, you can follow me and make a fortune. The girl bit into the green onion and looked at him. How? Yi Xuan lowered his voice. We rob them. We take their money. Everyone stared at one another. Rob a kingdom? No one had ever done something like that before. The plain-clothed girl looked at Xuan without speaking. He continued. We start with Tang Kingdom. We rob their military supplies, their army funds, their treasury, everything we can. Do you dare? The spear-wielding man beside her suddenly said, That's extremely dangerous. Yi Xuan replied calmly. We all live with our lives hanging on the edge of a blade. Why the hell should we fear danger? I'm asking one thing, do you dare or not? If you do, then we'll make this big. If you don't, that's fine too. I'll pay you to follow me, but anything we steal won't have your share in it. So choose, fixed payment or a cut of the spoils. The group gathered together and began discussing it. Some agreed, some disagreed, and a few even thought Yi Xuan looked like a swindler who could not be trusted. After some time, the plain-clothed girl suddenly raised a hand. Everyone fell silent. She looked at Yi Xuan. Why should I trust you? Yi Xuan stood. If you trust me, I don't need to say anything and you'll still trust me. If you don't, then no matter what I say, you still won't believe me. Isn't that so? The girl stared at him for a long moment before finally standing as well. How do we divide the loot? 50-50, Yi Xuan said. The spear-wielding man beside her frowned. You alone want half? Yi Xuan looked at him. If we meet an enemy, I'll fight the strongest one. The corner of the man's mouth twitched. He looked at Yi Xuan but said nothing more. The young man before him truly was powerful. The plain-clothed girl spoke. 50-50 is acceptable, but if the profit is too small or if I decide you're not worth that share, we can leave at any time. Yi Xuan extended his right hand. Agreed. She looked at him, then slapped her palm against his. Yi Xuan counted them. 12 in total. Every single one was in the secluding realm. And they were all young, around 20 years old at most. His expression grew serious. These people were definitely not ordinary. The plainclothed girl looked at him. You're in command now. Yi Xuan nodded. Then we're going to Tang Kingdom. The girl pursed her lips and whistled. A moment later, the ground behind the village began to tremble. More than a dozen black wolves, each as large as an ox, burst into view. Their fur was long, their eyes bright, and every one of them radiated a savage aura. Demonic beasts, powerful ones at that. These black wolves were at least comparable to ascending realm cultivators. Yi Xuan frowned. Demonic beasts were rare within Tang Kingdom's territory. Just who were these people? The plainclothed girl immediately mounted one of the black wolves and looked at him. What about you? Yi Xuan thought for a moment. Can I have one? She stared at him, then whistled again. Another wolf rushed out and stopped directly in front of Yi Xuan. He did not stand on ceremony. He leapt onto its back at once. Yi Xuan waved a hand. Move out, to Tang Kingdom. The instant he finished speaking, the black wolf beneath him sprang forward and shot away. Soon, more than a dozen black wolves thundered down the mountain and vanished into the vast wilderness. Yi Xuan was genuinely surprised by their speed. At this pace, it would take no more than half a day to reach Tang Kingdom, Liangji City. Its gates were tightly sealed. Countless soldiers packed the walls, while defensive formations had been prepared throughout the city to meet the coming enemy. Roughly 1,000 zhang outside Liangji City stood a vast sea of black cavalry. 100,000 black armored riders. The elite army of Tang Kingdom. On the city wall, Jiangju stood in silver armor, heroic and imposing despite the trace of exhaustion on her face. Beside her, a middle-aged man in heavy armor said in a deep voice, Marshal, Tang Kingdom is probably waiting for the troops from Yue Kingdom and Chu Kingdom. Once those two armies arrive, they'll attack immediately. Jiangju nodded. Tell all our brothers that Liangji City cannot fall. If this place is breached, Tang Kingdom's iron cavalry will have nothing left to stop them. They'll be able to charge deep into Zhang territory without resistance. Then the battlefield will move onto our own land, and countless civilians will die in the war. So we cannot lose this place, not even an inch. The middle-aged man nodded firmly. Understood. He turned and left. Jiangju gazed toward the endless black cavalry in the distance, her brows knitting together. Kangmu Academy, the underworld. You have to hold on. After crossing countless mountain ranges, Xuan's group finally arrived before an ancient city, Xuan City. This was the Tang Kingdom city closest to Liangji City. All logistical supplies for the Tang army passed through this place, which meant it was heavily guarded. The plainclothed girl beside Xuan suddenly said, There are 2,000 elite soldiers inside. 6 are in the secluding realm, and more than 30 are in the ascending realm. Xuan froze. How do you know that? She did not answer. Instead, she looked toward Xuan City. There are soldiers on all 4 walls, and the defenses are extremely tight. We can't sneak inside without causing a disturbance. Even if the 13 of us manage to get in, we can't hold off 2,000 elite soldiers for long. And if a battle starts here, the main Tang army will turn back to reinforce the city. If that happens, we're dead. She looked at Yi Xuan. So what do we do? Yi Xuan asked, Do you know where they keep their provisions and military funds? The girl raised her head toward the sky. A black hawk circled high above Xuan City. After a moment she said, In the military camp on the northern side of the city. It's heavily guarded. Yi Xuan nodded. Knowing the exact location is enough. The mysterious girl looked at him. And now? Yi Xuan shook his head. We don't have another option. We hit them head on. Everyone fell silent. Yi Xuan continued. I'll draw their attention. The rest of you charge the military camp with everything you've got. Take the army funds and burn the provisions. Can you do it? The girl stared at him. There's a very good chance you'll die. Yi Xuan hesitated for a moment, then said, How about you draw their attention and I go steal the goods instead? Everyone's faces darkened. Damn it. This bastard was shameless. Yi Xuan gave them a wicked grin. Get moving. Let me see how strong you people really are. With that, he charged out. The plainclothed girl watched him go, then said calmly, Don't let the people of King Zhou look down on us. Get ready. Everyone gathered their strength, prepared to strike at any moment. In the distance, a streak of sword light suddenly slammed into the gates of Xuan City. Boom! The gate was instantly split in two. Xuan charged straight into the city. The moment he entered, soldiers surrounded him from every direction, and more were pouring in by the second. Seeing their numbers swell, a savage curve appeared at the corner of Xuan's mouth. Then his vision suddenly dimmed. "I use the sword as my eyes. Sword eyes!" When Shan opened his eyes again, two beams of sword light shot from them like lightning. In an instant, dozens of soldiers directly in front of him were torn apart, completely shattered. Nearly 100 others were severely injured by those same two sword beams. Xuan did not stop. Lingshu's sword in hand, he continued charging forward. All he had to do now was buy time for the plain-clothed girl and the others. Kill! Xuan tore through the soldiers with his sword, and wherever he passed, heads rolled to the ground. His rampage drew more and more soldiers from every corner of the city. Outside the walls, the plain-clothed girl suddenly shouted, "Charge!" The instant her voice fell, the 12 riders on black wolves burst forward. Their speed was terrifying. In the blink of an eye, all 12 had stormed into the city and headed straight for the military camp. The soldiers surrounding Xuan immediately realized what was happening. One of their commanders went pale and roared, "Back to the camp! Get back to the camp!" Several groups of soldiers immediately began retreating, but they were nowhere near as fast as the black wolves. In less than 10 breaths, the plain-clothed girls group reached the camp. By then, several hundred elite soldiers had already gathered at its entrance. The expressions of the 12 young cultivators grew solemn. The individual cultivation of these soldiers might not be high, but no one could afford to underestimate them. They were hardened by killing intent, numerous, disciplined, and trained to attack and defend as one. Opponents like these were extremely troublesome. And now there was no road back. The plain-clothed girl suddenly turned toward a nearby young man. Ling Han shot into the air and clasped his hands before his chest. A wave of scorching heat spread across the sky. Then both of his arms burst into flames. High above them, a savage smile curved across Ling Han's lips. "Exploding flame descent!" The moment he shouted the name, his entire body plunged from the sky toward the soldiers below like a blazing meteor. Wherever he passed, the air itself seemed to ignite. At that moment, he shone like a miniature sun. Earth-rank martial skill. Fear flashed through the eyes of the soldiers below, yet not one of them retreated. A commander standing behind the formation roared, "Raise shields!" Thud. Hundreds of soldiers lifted their long shields in unison. Then Ling Han crashed down. Boom! More than a dozen soldiers were blasted into the air. Flames scattered in every direction, and the formation was instantly torn open down the middle. At that exact moment, the plain-clothed girl and the others charged straight into the military camp. A moment later, she rushed into one of the tents while her companions held the entrance behind her. Her gaze swept across the interior. Dozens of iron chests and 3 golden chests stood inside. She opened one of the iron chests. It was packed with glittering gold coins. She went silent for a heartbeat, then strode toward the golden chests and casually opened one. Inside lay a long saber. Peak, grade spirit weapon. She did not waste time inspecting it. She closed the lid, touched the storage ring on her index finger with her thumb, and in the next instant, every chest in the tent vanished. The plain-clothed girl turned and stepped back outside. By now, soldiers had surrounded them, and more were rushing over from every direction. She looked at the mass of troops ahead, then suddenly charged straight toward them. "Stay close! We're breaking out!" The instant she finished speaking, her speed exploded. Boom! Several soldiers had not even seen her move before they were blasted away. With the plain-clothed girl leading the charge, the group tore straight through the encirclement. She whistled sharply, and the black wolves that had been waiting off to the side rushed toward them. All 12 leapt onto their mounts and charged toward the city gates. When they reached the gate, Xuan was still fighting a crowd of soldiers. The plain-clothed girl called out, "Let's go!" Xuan slashed once, cleaving the soldier in front of him in half. At the same time, he tapped his toes against the ground and shot backward, landing directly behind the girl on her black wolf. The expressions of everyone behind her changed immediately. The girl frowned, but she said nothing. She simply drove the black wolf forward. They quickly burst out of the city. Then they stopped. Several thousand cavalrymen were charging toward them from the distance. They had come back! The plain-clothed girl's brows tightened. Xuan immediately said, "Back into the city. We'll leave from the other side," she replied in a low voice. "That'll take us deeper into Tang Kingdom." "We don't have a choice," Xuan said. She said no more. With a light pat against the black wolf beneath her, she turned back toward the city, and everyone else followed close behind. By then, the soldiers inside had already reorganized their formation. A commander holding a massive sword pointed straight at Xuan's group and roared, "Stop them! Kill!" Countless soldiers surged forward. Xuan suddenly shot into the air. A sword flashed sideways, and several heads flew from their shoulders. The plain-clothed girl leapt forward as well. Together, the two of them carved open a path of blood. A moment later, the wolf riders disappeared into the city and escaped through another route. The soldiers had no hope of catching them. Not long afterward, a cavalry unit arrived beneath the city walls. A middle-aged man in armor led them inside. The instant he saw the piles of corpses scattered through the streets, his face turned ashen. This man was Pei Xiaohu, commander of the 100,000 black armored cavalry, and one of the most renowned generals in all of Tang Kingdom. He swept his gaze across the devastation and said coldly, "Find out who these people are immediately. Inform His Majesty and request that the Black Saber Guards be sent to assist us. Also recall 30,000 cavalry at once. Seal every nearby border route. We cannot allow them to leave Tang Kingdom." Then he looked into the distance. "Send orders to the Dare to Die battalion. They are to pursue those people without rest until they catch them." Understood. Several officers behind him turned and departed. Pei Xiaohu stared at the end of the road, his face terrifyingly dark. This raid had not only cost him military funds, several treasures he had personally acquired had also been stolen, and most of them were peak-grade spirit weapons. A devastating loss. They could have stored everything inside storage rings, but that brought problems. Storage rings were extremely expensive, and most rings available for purchase had only a small amount of space. To hold that many supplies, they would have needed dozens of rings, which alone would cost a fortune. It simply was not practical. More importantly, storage rings were not necessarily safer. If all the military funds were carried by a single person and something happened to that person, then what? The higher-ups would never trust one individual with the entire army treasury either. He had to catch them. He had to recover what had been taken. Pei Xiaohu slowly closed his eyes. If they failed, the consequences would be severe. What he could not understand was where Tang Kingdom had found so many terrifying young experts of the secluding realm. Every one of them was monstrous. Xuan's group galloped at full speed. Roughly 4 hours later, they entered a dense forest and finally stopped. Every one of them carried wounds of some kind. Xuan was covered in them from head to toe. This battle had shown him the true power of soldiers. A single soldier might not be strong, but when hundreds or thousands fought together as a disciplined unit, they became terrifying. If those thousands of cavalrymen had surrounded him earlier, even the power of the earth would not have saved him. He would have died. On a battlefield between armies, even a god-allied realm expert could only do so much. Everyone sat down to rest, and Xuan squeezed in among them. The plain-clothed girl looked at him, then removed her storage ring. Dozens of chests appeared before the group. One person opened an iron chest. It was filled to the brim with shining gold coins. Everyone's eyes lit up instantly. Yet no one showed any real greed. They had all seen enough of the world not to lose themselves over money. The plain-clothed girl said 38 iron chests. Each holds at least 2 million gold coins. Around 70 million in total. Then there are 3 golden chests containing 8 peak-grade spirit weapons. Each one is worth roughly 5 million gold coins. 100 million! Smiles spread across everyone's faces. She looked at Xuan. "Half is yours." Everyone else looked at him as well. Xuan thought for a moment before saying, "Split it evenly." Evenly? Everyone froze. Xuan said seriously, "Everyone contributed. I don't have the right to take that much for myself. Divide it equally by head count." No one spoke, but several gazes toward him became noticeably friendlier. The plain-clothed girl studied him. "You're serious?" Xuan smiled. "Sword cultivators never lie. Sword cultivator." The girl nodded. She had almost forgotten that the young man before her was a Sword Dao Grandmaster. After a few seconds of silence, she said, "You drew most of the enemy's attention, so you should receive a little more. Of the 70 million gold coins, take 20 million. As for the peak-grade spirit weapons, you get 3. How about that?" Xuan nodded. "No problem." They quickly finished dividing the spoils. Everyone had made a considerable profit, and 2 members even received peak-grade spirit weapons perfectly suited to them. Once the distribution was complete, the plain-clothed girl looked at Xuan again. "What now?" Everyone turned toward him. Xuan thought for a moment. "Tang cavalry will definitely be pursuing us. We can't go back now, so there's only one direction left forward." The girl said, "Tang Kingdom may send all Mifan's realm experts after us." "Don't worry," Xuan replied. "They won't dare." She looked at him. "You have someone backing you." Xuan nodded. "They won't dare deploy anyone in the all-Mifan's realm." "Are you afraid of god-allied realm cultivators?" she answered calmly. "I've killed more than I can count." Xuan fell silent for a second. Then he said, "Let me formally introduce myself. Qingzhou Jiang Kingdom, Dean of Kenglin Academy Xuan." The plain-clothed girl pulled out another baked flatbread and took a bite. "Central Divine Continent, Lu Clan, Lu Banzhuang." The thin-looking man beside her turned to Xuan. "Central Divine Continent. Yi." Another voice followed. "Central Divine Continent, Kangxing Sect, Ling Han." "Central Divine Continent, Mo Clan, Mo Yunqi." Central Divine Continent, Southern Region, Kangheming, Central Divine Continent, Sacred Land, Ganwuwei. One after another, they introduced themselves. Yi Xuan's face remained expressionless, but inwardly he was shocked. Every single one of them came from Central Divine Continent. Why had people from there come all the way to this place? Central Divine Continent was unimaginably far away. As though she could read the question on his face, Lu Banzhuang looked at him and said, "Training. Experience. No one is secretly protecting us. Training. Experience." Yi Xuan understood immediately. These people had traveled all the way here to temper themselves, and not one of them had brought a powerful guardian along. They had come on their own. This was what real training looked like. If you brought an expert behind you to clean up every danger, that was not experience, it was pretending to be a pig so you could eat the tiger. At that moment, Yili suddenly looked at Yi Xuan. "You're the dean of Kanglan Academy?" Yi Xuan nodded. Yili's expression became strange. Yi Xuan was simply too young. Yili shifted aside and the spear-wielding man Mo Yu said, "Your Kanglan Academy is incredibly famous in Central Divine Continent." Yi Xuan shook his head. "That has nothing to do with me." Hearing that, the entire group looked at him again. Yi Xuan drew another large circle on the ground. "Our approximate position is here. We're at least 1,000 li from the imperial capital of Tang Kingdom. Along those 1,000 li, we'll have to pass at least 12 cities." Lu Banzhuang interrupted him. "You want to go all the way to the imperial capital?" Yi Xuan stopped and looked at her. "Afraid?" Everyone exchanged glances. Lu Banzhuang simply stared at him without answering. Yi Xuan lowered his voice. "We no longer have a road back. Moving forward is exactly what they won't expect." He paused, then continued. "And let me be frank. You're all already in the secluding realm. Advancing further will require an enormous amount of money. The loot we just took probably isn't enough to matter much to you, is it?" Cultivation was a furnace that burned money. That was why these people worked as mercenaries in the first place, to earn enough to buy cultivation resources and raise their realms. No matter how talented someone was, without money they could barely move forward. After a moment of silence, everyone turned toward Lu Banzhuang. She looked at Yi Xuan. "Do you have a plan?" He thought for a moment. "Not really. We rob them, then we run." "Rob and run." Lu Banzhuang nodded. "Fine." Everyone immediately mounted their black wolves again. Led by Ye Xuan and Lu Banzhuang, the group pushed deeper into Tang Kingdom. Every one of these dozen-plus young people was a top-tier genius. As long as they did not encounter a all-Mephin's realm expert or a true army, there was almost no one they needed to fear. Before long, they reached another ancient city. They did not even bother finding out its name. They simply charged straight in and headed for the city lord's manor. Every city had a city lord's manor. It was the highest seat of local authority, and aside from the Drunken Immortal Pavilion's merchant branch, usually the wealthiest place in the entire city. Yi Xuan obviously could not lead them into robbing the Drunken Immortal Pavilion, so the city lord's manor became the perfect target. They struck with astonishing speed, storming straight through the gates. Plenty of soldiers tried to stop them along the way, but none could hold them back. Yi Xuan and Lu Banzhuang rushed directly into the manor's treasury. Without wasting a single word, the two began sweeping up everything in sight. Within moments, the treasury had been stripped bare. About 5 minutes later, Ye Xuan's group burst out of the city and continued toward the next one. Not long after they left, a unit of black-clad cavalry stormed through the gates. There were roughly 300 riders. Every one of them carried a long black saber, and each gave off a cold, razor-sharp aura. The Black Saber Guards. They were among the most loyal servants of the Tang royal family. Even the weakest among them stood at the peak of the ascending realm. Everyone was an elite warrior selected from the military camps after surviving countless battles. Their leader wore a mask. He lifted his head toward the distance. "Pursue them." The Black Saber Guards immediately thundered out of the city. Deep in the mountains, Ye Xuan's group continued galloping at full speed. Lu Banzhuang, riding not far from him, suddenly said, "There's a cavalry unit behind us. Around 300 riders. They're not ordinary soldiers. They're strong." Yi Xuan nodded. "Can they catch us?" She shook her head. "No." "Then ignore them," he replied. "We're going to the next city." Then he suddenly raised his voice. "That last place gave us at least 50 million gold coins, 3 peak-grade spirit weapons, and a pile of other valuables." "Oh!" The group burst into laughter. "Do it! Let's slaughter them! Ha ha! Charge! Time to rob another one! We're getting rich! Ha ha!" Lu Banzhuang looked at Ye Xuan. "You don't look like a sword cultivator at all. You look more like a bandit." Yi Xuan. Soon, the Black Wolves carried them to another ancient city. This time, the walls were already packed with soldiers holding longbows. The people behind Yi Xuan were just about to charge when he suddenly said, "We're going around." Around, everyone stared at him. They were not robbing this one? Yi Xuan said seriously, "Trust me, we go around." Then he turned his black wolf and rode away. Lu Banzhuang watched him for a moment, then said, "Follow him." The group changed direction and quickly vanished from the soldiers' sight. On the city wall, one commander watched them disappear and cursed through clenched teeth. Damn it! Less than 10 minutes later, several hundred cavalrymen arrived beneath the city, the Black Saber Guards. Their masked leader looked up at the wall. The commander above said in a deep voice, "They left." The masked man suddenly shouted, "No! They're heading for the next city! Move!" The several hundred riders immediately changed direction. Elsewhere, Xuan's group raced through the mountain ranges. The terrain here was extremely complicated, but fortunately their black wolves were powerful enough that cliffs, rocks, forests, and broken ground barely slowed them. Without these mounts, there was no way they could have penetrated this deeply into Tang territory. Lu Banzhuang suddenly asked, "You were worried that city would hold us up long enough for the cavalry behind us to catch us?" Xuan nodded. "There are only 13 of us. Every fight has to end fast. The moment we're trapped, those cavalrymen will catch up, and then the main army will arrive behind them. At that point, even if we grew wings, we wouldn't escape." Lu Banzhuang looked into the distance. "They probably have other moves prepared." Xuan nodded. "Which means we need to move even faster." Then he glanced around at everyone. "When we fight again, use everything you've got. Don't hold back." Everyone nodded. They understood their situation perfectly well and did not dare underestimate it. They might all be monstrous geniuses, but right now they were facing an entire kingdom. Just thinking about it made their blood boil. They were robbing a kingdom. When they returned home, this alone would give them enough stories to brag about for years. Before long, another city appeared in the distance. This city was far larger than the previous two, a major city. Everyone's expressions gradually turned serious. A city of this size would undoubtedly have much stronger defenses. Lu Banzhuang looked at Xuan. "What do we do?" The others also turned toward him. After everything that had happened, Xuan had already earned a certain amount of respect from the group, and even some genuine goodwill. Especially after he had refused to take half the loot for himself, and instead agreed to divide it among everyone. He was not greedy. No one liked a bottomless glutton. Xuan was silent for a second before saying, "We take it down. If this works, everyone is going to make a fortune." With that, he led the charge. Yili, standing beside Lu Banzhuang, suddenly said, "This guy's pretty good. Once all this is over, big sister, ask whether he'd be willing to join us. We could travel and train together." The others behind Lu Banzhuang nodded in agreement. She looked towards Xuan in the distance. "I'll ask him when the time comes. Let's go." Then the entire group surged forward. Their speed was far beyond ordinary horses. Once the black wolves began charging, they were terrifyingly fast. "Who goes there?" A shout came from the city wall. A streak of sword light swept across the air. Boom! A section of the wall exploded apart. Xuan and the others stormed straight into the city and rushed towards the city lord's manor. Before long, a formation of soldiers blocked their path. Xuan's face was expressionless. "Cut through them." The moment he spoke, he flicked a finger. Ling Shou's sword shot forward. Several soldiers' heads flew into the air. Lu Banzhuang and the others attacked at the same time, unstoppable. In the blink of an eye, the 13 of them tore the soldiers' formation apart and charged toward the city lord's manor. More troops surrounded them along the way, but none managed to slow them in the slightest. Xuan and Lu Banzhuang led from the front, killing anyone who stood in their path, while not a single person behind them was weak. They stormed into the manor. At that moment, several powerful auras suddenly rushed toward them. God-allied realm experts, 3 of them. Xuan was just about to strike when Lu Banzhuang shot forward first. She moved so quickly that her body seemed to tear the air apart. Before Xuan could even clearly see what she had done, one of the God-allied realm cultivators in the distance was blasted away and crashed to the ground. He did not get back up. Xuan was genuinely surprised. This girl was incredibly strong. The other 2 God-allied realm experts saw what happened and did not even attempt to fight. They turned and fled without hesitation. Neither of them was stupid. Staying would have been no different from throwing their lives away. Lu Banzhuang turned toward Xuan. "The martial cultivators in Qingzhou are pretty weak." Then she seemed to remember something and added, "Of all the people I've met, only you and Anlanshu are exceptions." She turned and strode away. "Anlanshu!" Xuan froze for a moment, then quickly followed her. The 2 soon entered the treasury. They did not even bother inspecting things individually. They simply swept up everything they could find at insane speed. A short while later, just as they were about to leave, something unexpected happened. Without the slightest warning, 2 cold flashes slashed toward Xuan's and Lu Banzhuang's throats. At the same time, 2 shadowy figures appeared behind them as though they had materialized from thin air. "Assassins from the underworld! More assassins!" Xuan's expression instantly turned savage. He slammed his right foot into the ground, and a layer of golden armor appeared around his body. "Earth armor!" Several daggers stabbed toward his vital points, but none could pierce the golden defense. Xuan spun around and punched forward. One punch to smash your head! Boom! His fist crashed out, and the ghost-like shadow before him shattered instantly. Beside him, Lu Banzhuang reacted even faster. The instant the two cold flashes appeared, she raised her hand and lightly pinched them between her thumb and forefinger. Then she drove one knee forward. Bang! The shadow in front of her shattered on the spot. For one brief moment, the entire treasury became deathly still. Then every remaining underworld assassin vanished. Lu Banzhuang looked at Ye Xuan. The underworld? He nodded. She looked away. We'll talk about it later. The two left the treasury. At the entrance to the city lord's manor, more and more soldiers were gathering, but Yi Li and the others had stopped them from advancing. Seeing those few people hold back hundreds of soldiers left Xuan deeply shocked. They were strong. Every one of them had survived countless life and death battles. Their talent was excellent, and all of them came from Central Divine Continent. Their actual combat strength was absolutely no weaker than ordinary God-allied realm cultivators. The world was vast, and geniuses were everywhere. Yi Xuan pushed those thoughts aside. He and Lu Banzhuang charged into the soldiers. Boom! Boom! Under their combined assault, a path was torn open. The 13 riders mounted their black wolves and quickly vanished at the far end of the road. The instant they left the city, the pounding of horse hooves thundered behind them. The black saber guards, their masked leader, stared at Yu Xuan's group. Faster! Full speed! Hundreds of cavalrymen surged forward like arrows, making the ground tremble beneath them. Outside the city, Yi Xuan's group was also pushing their mounts to the limit. If it were only a few hundred black saber guards, they would not have been overly afraid. Every member of their group could easily fight 10 ordinary opponents at once. But if they stopped to fight these guards, the main Tang army would inevitably catch up. They could fight 1 against 10. They could not fight 1 against 100. They had to run. Yi Xuan suddenly shouted, "Into the mountains!" The group immediately changed direction and plunged into the deep mountain range. When the pursuing black saber guards saw this, their expressions turned ugly. If they followed into the mountains, their horses would lose much of their speed. The masked leader stared after Yi Xuan's group for a long time, his eyes dark and cold. A black saber guard rode up beside him. "Commander Dao, His Majesty has ordered us not to lose their trail. Reinforcements are already on the way." The masked man frowned. "What reinforcements?" The guard replied, "We don't know. His Majesty said they'll contact us when they arrive. We're to cooperate with them and encircle those people." The masked man was silent for a moment. "Have we identified them yet?" The guard answered in a low voice. "The young sword cultivator is Yi Xuan, state warrior of Tang Kingdom. He's also the dean of Kanglan Academy." Yi Xuan. The masked man's right hand tightened around the saber at his waist. "Very good, Yi Xuan. Very good." Deep in the mountains, Yi Xuan's group stopped beside a pool of water. Yi Li and several others leaned down and drank deeply. After dismounting, Yi Xuan suddenly seemed to remember something. He turned toward Lu Banzhuang, who was gnawing on another baked flatbread nearby. "Where did you get these wolves?" "The black wolves. They were astonishingly fast, their bodies were incredibly tough, and they could even withstand arrows. They were vastly superior to ordinary horses." Lu Banzhuang looked at him. "Bought them in Central Divine Continent." So they had brought them all the way from Central Divine Continent. Yi Xuan nodded, then suddenly looked to his right. A young man there had 3 arrows buried in his body and was pulling them out one by one. What caught Yi Xuan's attention was that the man's expression never changed. He did not even frown. Yi Xuan hesitated briefly, then walked over and flicked a pill toward him. The man glanced at it, surprise flashing in his eyes. "Wound healing pill?" Yi Xuan nodded. "It'll help your wounds heal faster. The fighting ahead is going to be brutal. Brutal fighting." He knew Tang Kingdom would never simply allow them to rampage through its territory without consequence. From this point onward, Tang Kingdom would spare no cost to kill them. The man looked at Yi Xuan. "This pill is worth several 100,000 gold coins." Yi Xuan smiled. "You think I'm trying to buy your loyalty?" Everyone nearby looked over. Buying loyalty. Truthfully, some of them had thought exactly that. Yi Xuan laughed. "That's right, I am. An upright man doesn't hide what he's thinking. I, Yi Xuan, want to become friends with all of you. Is there a problem with that?" "Ha ha!" Ling Han suddenly burst into laughter. "No problem at all, you're interesting. I, Ling Han, am willing to call you a friend." The others laughed as well. Straightforward. They clearly liked Yi Xuan's directness and the fact that he did not bother hiding his intentions. Of course, there was another important reason. He was strong, and he was a sword cultivator. Who would not want a powerful sword cultivator as a friend? More importantly, Yi Xuan's personality suited this group extremely well. The wounded man looked at him. "Thank you." He swallowed the wound healing pill, then said, "I'm Gu Yunqing, from the Gu clan." Yi Xuan smiled. "I'll remember your name." Gu Yunqing grinned, then seemed to think of something. "All right, tell us, What happened to your eyes? Everyone looked at Yi Xuan. His eyes. They had all been curious for a long time, but asking earlier would have seemed disrespectful. Now that they were more familiar with one another, there was no need to be so restrained. Yi Xuan smiled. Cultivation backlash, then I went blind. Everyone. Lu Banzhuang spoke from nearby. Why are underworld assassins involved? Yi Xuan's expression became serious. I don't mind telling you. I have a blood feud with Kangmu Academy and the underworld. The Kangmu Academy and underworld branches in Great Cloud Realm helped ignite this war. Half the reason for all of it is me. They want me dead, but they're all Mima's realm experts, don't dare attack me directly, so they resorted to this. Yi Li asked curiously. The underworld and Kangmu Academy are both major powers. How did you manage to develop a life-and-death feud with both of them? Yi Xuan nodded slightly. From now on, underworld assassins could appear at any time. If any of you want to leave, I'll understand completely. Yi Li shook his head. We're not afraid of them. Gu Yunqing beside him laughed. The underworld is disgusting, but not enough to scare us away. Still, everyone needs to be more careful from now on. Their assassins are professionals. On the other side, Ling Han suddenly said in a deep voice, if they're only underworld assassins from Qingzhou, then there's nothing to fear. What worries me is if they send their true elites from Central Divine Continent. Everyone's expressions became heavy. The assassins from Central Divine Continent were no joke. In a direct one-on-one fight, none of them would be afraid. But assassins did not fight fair. An arrow from the shadows was always the hardest thing to guard against. The atmosphere grew tense. Then Lu Banzhuang suddenly said, it's fine. Everyone looked at her. She spoke calmly. Anyone who gets in the way of us making money dies. Then she looked at Yi Xuan. He and I will deal with the assassins. The rest of you need to stay alert at all times. From now on, keep your minds fully focused. I don't want to lose anyone. Everyone nodded. Yi Xuan walked over and emptied all the treasures he had taken from the city lord's manor onto the ground. Lu Banzhuang did the same. When the pile appeared, everyone's eyes widened. Yi Xuan quickly counted everything. Around 90 million gold coins in total. 7 peak-grade spirit weapons. 8 martial skill manuals. None are earth rank, but together they should still sell for at least 10 million. There are also some gold, silver, and jade items worth around another 10 million. And this time, we got an unexpected bonus. Spirit stones. About 1 million peak-grade spirit stones in total. Peak-grade spirit stones. On the market, a single spirit stone was worth roughly 100 gold coins. Spirit stones were far more valuable than ordinary gold. And for cultivators like them, peak-grade spirit stones were even more important because cultivation itself could not be separated from spiritual energy. They had struck it rich. Everyone broke into wide smiles. Yi Xuan said, see whether any of these peak-grade spirit weapons suit you. If you need one, take it. If no one needs the rest, we'll count them as gold and divide the value among everyone. The group examined the weapons. 2 people soon selected one each, and under the distribution arranged by Yi Xuan and Lu Banzhuang, everyone received a considerable share of wealth. As for Yi Xuan, he had now personally received 60 million gold coins, 4 peak-grade spirit weapons, and 120,000 peak-grade spirit stones. Adding that to his previous wealth, he currently possessed 8 peak-grade spirit weapons and roughly 230 million gold coins. It looked like an enormous amount. In reality, it was not. The money was not for him alone. The cultivation resources needed by Mo Yunqi and the others cost money. Rebuilding and developing Kanglan Academy also required an enormous amount of wealth. And at the moment, Kanglan Academy had no stable source of income whatsoever. If Ye Xuan did not go out and rob people, he feared that before long everyone at the academy would starve to death. The pressure was enormous. Just then, Ye Xuan frowned. In the distance, Lu Banzhuang suddenly stood. Alert! Everyone immediately gathered together. Ye Xuan held Ling Xiao's sword in his hand, his face expressionless. The surroundings were completely silent. Then a sound came from the forest. Branches shook. Lu Banzhuang's pupils contracted. Back! Lu Banzhuang had barely finished speaking when black-clad figures began emerging from the forest. They moved like ghosts, drifting out from between the trees. There were not many of them, just over 30. Each one carried a black crossbow, and every single crossbow was a peak-grade spirit weapon. All of the black-clad figures were in the secluding realm. More than that, every one of them stood at the peak of the secluding realm. Yi Xuan focused carefully and noticed 2 large golden characters embroidered across their chests. Great Cloud. The Great Cloud Empire. At the same time, the thunder of hooves came from behind them. The Black Saber Guards. Enemies on both sides. Lu Banzhuang looked at Yi Xuan. What now? A savage smile curled across his lips. He raised Ling Xiu's sword and pointed toward the black-clad soldiers. Kill them and take their crossbows. Lu Banzhuang looked at him. You have 15 minutes to kill every last one of them. I'll take people and hold off the cavalry behind us. 15 minutes. That's all you get. She turned away. 6 people, follow me! 6 went with Lu Banzhuang. The remaining 5 stayed with Yeshan. Not one of them showed fear. 15 minutes. Ling Shu's sword trembled continuously in Yixuan's hand. He stood silent for a heartbeat, then roared, "Hum!" A clear sword cry rang through the forest as all 6 charged toward the 30-plus black-clad enemies. The instant Yixuan's group moved, dozens of silver crossbow bolts shot toward them. Those bolts were spirit weapons as well, ridiculously wealthy. Xuan abruptly stopped and shouted, "Behind me, all of you!" The 5 others did not hesitate. They formed a line and took cover behind him. Xuan slammed his right foot into the ground. Boom! The earth shook violently. In an instant, the power of the earth surged around his body. "Earth armor!" Ling Shu's sword flashed in his hand as he released wave after wave of sword light. Most of the incoming bolts were stopped by the sword beams, but a few slipped through and struck his body. The earth armor blocked every one of them. Even so, the impact hurt like hell. The black-clad soldiers were just about to fire a second volley when Yixuan stomped down again. His body shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. Kill! The 5 behind him charged after him. Before Yixuan even reached the enemy, Ling Shu's sword flew from his hand and slashed forward. The strike carried sword force, battle intent, and sword intent. Most importantly, it also carried the power of the earth. The speed and strength of that sword had already surpassed the limits of the secluding realm. The leading black-clad man was pierced straight through the abdomen. At that exact moment, a massive sword appeared in Yixuan's hand. Big black sword. Gripping the enormous blade, Yixuan leapt high into the air and came crashing down toward another black-clad man. The force behind that strike was terrifying, as if one sword alone could split the earth apart. Its momentum was brutally domineering. The black-clad man's pupils contracted. He threw away his crossbow, drew a black saber from his waist, and slashed upward against big black sword. Clang! The instant the weapons collided, the black saber shattered, and in the same moment, the man's body was crushed apart by Yixuan's sword, destroyed in one strike. With the power of the earth supporting him, Yixuan's strength had increased dramatically. Before, he could already kill ordinary secluding realm cultivators with relative ease. But these enemies were not ordinary secluding realm experts. Every one of them was an elite. And because he needed to end the battle as quickly as possible, he held nothing back and used the power of the earth from the start. After crushing that man, Yixuan swept Big Black Sword sideways. A massive golden sword wave surged outward like a tide. Boom! A black-clad man's several Sunkel Jiang away was blasted into the air. At almost the same instant, Ling Xiu's sword pierced straight through the forehead of another. Kill! Yixuan vanished from where he stood. Sword light flickered again and again through the battlefield, and the ground beneath them gradually turned red with blood. The 5 people fighting beside him were just as formidable. Every one of them could fight several enemies at once without falling into a disadvantage. Ling Han was especially vicious. With his long spear in hand, the number of enemies he killed was nearly equal to Yixuan's. The black-clad fighters grew fewer and fewer. Behind them, however, the battle was even more brutal. 7 people against several hundred black saber guards. Fortunately, they were fighting inside a dense forest, where the cavalry could not form a proper military formation. Otherwise, Lu Banzhuang's group would never have been able to hold them back. Even with that advantage, their situation was terrible. Even someone as strong as Lu Banzhuang had already been wounded. Time passed one breath at a time. Soon 5 minutes had gone by. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Xuan suddenly hurled Big Black Sword forward. 10 zhang away. Boom! The huge sword smashed a black-clad man's body into bloody pulp. With his death, every one of the black-clad attackers had been killed. Yixuan's group had also suffered serious injuries. But fortunately, no one had died. Yixuan quickly gathered all the black crossbows and the quivers of bolts. Then he turned and ran. Go! Help them! The 5 behind him rushed after him. They soon reached the battlefield where Lu Banzhuang's group was fighting. No one wasted time speaking. Xuan gripped Big Black Sword and hurled it at a nearby black saber guard. Boom! The guard was smashed into a mass of flesh. Retreat! An enraged shout rang out from among the black saber guards. The guards immediately withdrew like a receding tide. Yixuan's group did not pursue them. They were in no condition to do so. Before long, the black saber guards had left the forest and stopped in an open area outside. One guard beside the masked commander said in a low voice, "Commander Dao, they're all badly wounded. We have a chance to kill them now." The masked man shook his head. "That forest is too cramped for us to fight properly. Even if we kill them in the end, with the combat strength those 13 possess, we'd probably be wiped out as well." He looked toward the forest. Deeper inside is a vast swamp. They can't cross it. We only need to surround this area and wait for reinforcements. Another black saber guard said, "Commander Dao, all 13 are monstrous geniuses. Ordinary cultivators aren't their match." The masked man sneered. "Don't worry. Yixuan is here. There are plenty of people who want him dead. Pass down the order." Everyone is to remain calm and hold position. Do not let them escape. Understood! The black saber guards answered in unison. Inside the forest, Xuan and the others sat beside a pool of water. Half the pool had already turned red. All of it was their blood. Almost everyone had been wounded in the previous battle. The worst injured was a man named Shang Yue. His entire right leg had been severed. Xuan walked over and took out a wound-healing pill. He was about to hand it over when Shang Yue shook his head. Don't waste it. Xuan ignored him and forced the pill into his mouth. Shang Yue looked at him but said nothing. Xuan swept his awareness across the group. Although he could not see with his eyes, he could still sense how exhausted everyone was. The previous battle had drained far too much of their physical strength and spiritual energy. Wounded and exhausted, they were in terrible condition. The atmosphere grew heavy. Then Xuan suddenly laughed. Are you afraid? Everyone looked at him. Xuan shook his head with a smile. There's no road back anymore. At worst we die. What do you think? Hearing that, everyone smiled. That was right. At worst they died. There was no ending more final than that anyway. Xuan's expression turned serious. My guess is that the people outside are waiting for reinforcements. Reinforcements are definitely coming. We just don't know who they're bringing. Some of our people already scouted ahead. Not far from here is a swamp so vast we can't even see the other side. Crossing it is basically impossible. He paused. So the only thing we can do now is break out. We have to cut through their encirclement. It'll be extremely difficult. Those several hundred men are elites who have undergone strict military training, and all of us are badly injured. But we don't have another choice. Everyone fell silent. Xuan turned toward Lu Banzhuang. Any other ideas? She shook her head. We can't force our way out. Those people are death soldiers. They won't retreat. We're all heavily wounded now. If we charge out head-on, maybe 1 or 2 people survive. Everyone else dies. She looked at him directly. You understand what I mean, don't you? Xuan said nothing. Of course he understood. There was one thing he had failed to consider. He still had considerable combat strength left. So did Lu Banzhuang. The two of them were the strongest in the group, and if they wanted to break through alone, it would not be too difficult. But what about Ling Han and the others? They were powerful, but after that bloody battle, they had at most 50 or 60% of their strength remaining. If they charged out now against soldiers who did not fear death, forget Ling Han and the others. Even Xuan and Lu Banzhuang would be in danger. But if they stayed here and waited for Tang Kingdom's reinforcements to arrive, everyone would definitely die. The situation was unstable in the extreme. At that moment, an old man suddenly appeared nearby. Lu Banzhuang instinctively prepared to attack, but Xuan stopped her. He recognized the old man's black clothing. It was the uniform of Drunken Immortal Pavilion. The old man walked toward Xuan and bowed slightly. Young Master Yi. Xuan tilted his head. The old man said solemnly, I was sent by the 5th Pavilion Master to assist young Master Yi. The 5th Pavilion Master. Xuan froze, then quickly remembered. The former 9th Pavilion Master of Drunken Immortal Pavilion in Tang Kingdom had recently been promoted to 5th Pavilion Master. Xuan asked, How are you going to help us? The old man replied, 300 li from here is a city called Guinan City. Young Master Yi and your companions must reach the Drunken Immortal Pavilion branch there. Tang armies have already surrounded this region from every direction. If you try to escape by any other route, you won't make it out. Xuan said, Go on. The old man glanced toward the forest outside. In a moment, our people from Drunken Immortal Pavilion will attack. When the fighting creates chaos, young Master Yi and your companions must use the opportunity to break through. Then ride straight for Guinan City. Our people are already waiting there to receive you. Xuan nodded. Good. The old man looked at the group. Can all of you still fight? Xuan turned toward Lu Banzhuang. She was silent for a moment, then nodded. Let's go. Then she looked at Shang Yue, whose leg had been severed. Shang Yue gave a crooked grin. You all go, I can't move anymore. Lu Banzhuang looked at Yili. You'll take care of him when we move. Yili nodded. Understood. Lu Banzhuang looked at Xuan. Xuan looked at the old man. The old man nodded. At that exact moment, the sound of intense fighting erupted outside the forest. Xuan said, Move! Everyone mounted their black wolves. Then all 13 charged out of the forest. Outside, dozens of black-clad figures were already fighting the Black Saber Guards. Among them were 20 God-allied realm experts. Xuan took the lead. Ling Shu's sword flew back and forth before him, and every flash of the sword brought a spray of fresh blood. The masked commander nearby suddenly roared, Stop them! Most of the Black Saber Guards immediately moved to surround Xuan's group. But the God-allied realm experts from Drunken Immortal Pavilion intercepted them at once. Xuan and the others charged straight toward the remaining Black Saber Guards. Then their expressions suddenly turned grave. Several hundred zhang ahead stood a young man holding a Yanyue saber. He looked only around 20 years old. His long, disheveled hair hung over his chest, and a savage smile twisted across his face. Behind him stood another 20 armored men, each carrying a long saber. The young man suddenly roared, "Kill!" The instant the word left his mouth, he charged straight toward Yi Xuan's group. The long saber dragged across the ground, scattering sparks everywhere. Cracks spread beneath his feet, while the aura around him surged wildly higher and higher. God-allied realm, and more than that. A Saber Dao Grandmaster,